Welcome to the Compass Conversations podcast. We're a community of professional peers who love learning with and from each other. In other words, we choose collaboration over competition. Every conversation here is organic. Even the opening topic isn't settled until 5 minutes before we hit record. And the rest is riffing off of each other's brilliance. Thanks for hanging out with us in a new paradigm of learning, teaching, and expansion, where presence and non-competitive conversation create the space to learn without having to be schooled. Please visit compassconversations.com to discover more about this peer community and to include yourself as a sponsor. Super duper. Okay, so here we go, starting a Compass conversation. And I will start this off by reading a short invocation paragraph just to set the tone of why we're here and what we might be playing with, and then open the floor to whatever kinds of curiosity or inspiration might come. So we enjoy these conversations from our shared sense of connection, camaraderie, and love. Living, learning, leading by example, as a community of peers, we're curious to learn from and with one another, willing to explore together, acknowledging the interspecies family on this planet, while lovingly including ourselves in the family of life from the heart for the heart. So from here, we just get to enjoy each other's presence. We might play with what inspires you or where your curiosity is leading you at this point. But I know I have curiosity for each of you, and hope we all just are curious about each other. So welcome everybody. And it's just so wonderful to play together. So hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go.
Oh, so I was going to say what I think would be super helpful is if there was maybe you said you had the curiosity about each of us. So if like you could maybe start that and maybe we can jive off of that with one of us, that would be awesome.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So one of the things that I would love to hear about, for one thing, is Karen, I would love to hear just anything you're open to sharing about, your journey of doing dressage differently in a world that is, can be pretty tight and linear. And Nishan, the same. I mean, to be dancing in the world called dressage and yet not sacrifice your heart to it. That's a remarkable thing. I have my own awareness of my world, but I'm not in dressage land, right? And Carla as well. You work with people who live in dressage town, right? And yet there's a whole different awareness to bring to it. So I don't mean this to be like an interview. I mean, it's not meant to be that. It's like, what is it that inspired us to be different in that conventional world? And what's it like, now that people are actually asking questions differently? To me.
And are they asking questions differently? I'm curious about that.
Oh, you've got
the questions changed.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think things feel really different than they did, when I first started doing things differently. I mean, there's a couple ways to answer it. I mean, one is, I started out as just a backyard rider with the girl in love with my horse. So that was the heart of what I was doing. I wasn't like a horse show kid, so my journey went from experiencing being, just a kid with my horse And then I ended up doing dressage, and it was through, you know, this one horse that I had when I was a kid that ended up going up the levels and competing and, you know, doing really well, and thinking, wow, what a special horse. And then it wasn't, you know, then I was a professional, and it wasn't till later, till I had my own horse again. And then I started doing this more, you know, natural stuff. And actually, I was starting to act with him more like I did when I was a kid, and less like a professional. And then all of a sudden, that horse started going above and beyond when he had so many strikes against him. And I went, wait a minute,
Yeah.
maybe it has less to, I mean, of course, techniques are important, but it reminded me of me being a kid. I was riding him in the halter and bareback, just like I did when I was a kid. And then his dressage improved. So it was like a little science experiment that I didn't even know I was having. And then I went, oh, that part of it is actually the most important. Well, everything's important, but it's a really important part, because that was the only thing that I started doing differently. So he was going above and beyond than some of my training horses who were training and progressing, but it wasn't magical. So that got my attention enough to start looking differently. But as far as like how I navigate it, you know, I always refer back to the object of dressage as written in the FEI rule book, which is the object of dressage is the development of the horse into a happy athlete through harmonious education, resulting in a horse that's calm, loose, supple, and flexible, but also confident, attentive, and keen, thus achieving perfect understanding with his rider. And I was like, oh, that's dressage.
Yeah, right.
That's
Wow, how have you
dressage. Like,
gotten away
who
from
wants
that?
to
Yeah.
change that, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of times I've recited that to dressage professionals, and
Yeah.
they go, ooh, that's good. What's that? I go, that's the rule book's definition of the object of dressage. So to me, that there's no conflict between doing dressage, doing what I do in harmony with my horse, and doing dressage, because that is what dressage is to me.
I love it.
Not rollker and all that. That's not, I just say that's not dressage. Like that to me is not. So I kind of just took ownership back of what is dressage, and that way there's no conflict. So I just do what, and you know, and then it's nice to use the rule book as like, see, I am doing real dressage. What are you doing?
Oh my God, I love it, Karen. That makes me think about like how I've sort of done everything in life, you know, like in spirituality, call it personal growth, call it expansion, call it whatever you want. It's the like getting to know who you are so you can take yourself back, right? I kind of looked at all the spiritual texts as the rule book. And, you know, what if we do what they say?
What do we actually do what it says?
What if we actually do that and actually like live in love and honor one another and actually connect through the heart? Like, what if they're actually saying something instead of fighting it and trying to prove it? What if you actually just do it? Which,
Yeah.
you know, Nishan, I mean, it seems similar to the journey that you're committed to as well.
Yeah. So I came to it a little differently. I learned how to ride in a after school nonprofit in the middle of the city. It was a diversion program for inner city kids, underprivileged kids. And I had learned I had done Western stuff. I had roped and all of that stuff, and it was super, super fun. Um, and then there was a horse that I fell in love with. And the only way that I could ride him is if I switched disciplines in the program. And I was seeing how much longer some of the horses were lasting with the who were in the programs of some of my teachers, and they had horses 20 years old, 21 years old, doing work at the Grand Prix. And like a lot of the Western horses that I was around and had access to, and a lot of the people that I learned from, a lot of their horses were put down by 20, you know. And so I showed for a little bit, and then I kind of aged out. And I had started actually teaching. I started riding when I was 13, and they asked me to start teaching when I was 15. And so, kind of feeling my way around that, and they got me two really, really good teachers that would come in once a month. And that was kind of my formation. And but I've always had a real wonderful um heart calling to horses that just people didn't understand. And first it was emotional stuff, which is what it is, and then it started to turn into major injury stuff. And so, like, um for me, a lot of the work that dressage is actually medicinal rehab stuff. And there's so many different schools, right? You have the ridden work, you have the work on the lunge, you have the work in hand, you have all of these things, but being able to isolate um limbs and parts of the body, and helping horses find courage to use their bodies again. um and so it's been I mean, and like right now, that's kind of where I'm at. I take in really hard cases just to see, this is how dressage proves itself to me as something truthful.
I love that.
Nice.
It actually makes me curious about Shay then, and how do you see your work? And like, because Nishan saying it's truthful,
Mm.
that goes right to my heart. And like, I want to hear you and Shay talk about what truthful is.
Okay, so for me, it's that the horse understands the purpose of what they're doing. Does it mean, do they, when the what and the why is clear to them, the how is easy to find. I mean, and in that way, when it comes to rehab work, and then when rehab work goes into training work, because like I have some horses, I have like a little Mustang that comes and works with me, and like she technically should not be working, right? She has spots of bone on bone in her stifle because her meniscus has fallen apart. And through really, really targeted work, like she's a trail horse. She was in the Black Hills doing 10-mile-a-day rides over summer, and when she came in, she couldn't walk. And so the fact kind of an understanding that, like, we can rebuild the brain through proper movement patterns, and really putting in those proper movement patterns so that the horse begins to understand that, like, moving like this feels good, and it feels better than the memory of it hurting, and helping them find that courage to try. um and you do that with a number of ways: pole work, in hand work, and sometimes they just show you things. They're like, this is what feels good, and they teach you something new, so like that's the truthful part, is the conversation where you can suggest something, and they can say in whatever way they say it, right? Sometimes it's an image in my head, sometimes it's a feeling in my body, sometimes they just do something, you're like, what about this, and this feels better, and so it truly is, for me, a real conversation.
I love it. Oh, I could just go nuts with that, but I'm not going to do that. Shay, did you want to say something, Karen? Because
I just want to add just one
Yeah.
little piece of that, because I love what Nishan, what you just said. And I tell people, aids are called aids because they're here to help.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that in first intention of doing dressage, whatever that means, is to help them find balance and to be able to carry us, and it's there to help, not to make. It's like, I want you to feel better, is what I'm thinking. I want you to
Right.
this will feel better. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard, but you want them to, I won't dream that after sessions my horse is like, oh, I feel great,
Yeah.
that they somehow
Yeah.
So I love how you describe that, Nishan, because I think that's the intention of I'm looking for ways for you to feel your power or to feel your freedom or to feel, more balance, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then then there's fancy stuff, which is a gift that they give us if
Well,
if
I
we're
mean, yeah,
worthy,
and
but we're there for the horse first.
yeah, it's an invitation. It's an invitation for them to be in a better space with their body.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the aids are for me with this work. It's an invitation. And then when that's an invitation, then the fancy stuff isn't so scary because they trust you not to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what you want, but they trust you with their try. And they'll and like that's and then like the fancy stuff can heal them because it triggers muscle chains and changes fascia and opens things up, and it's really, really cool.
And that makes me think about what Carla offers the rider in tandem with offering that to the horse. But first, I want to hear Shay, like, what is this? Where does this land in your world with the work that you do? I'm just really curious what this sparks in you as you're listening.
Well, I could just say ditto, but because Nishan said it beautifully. But before I started to do the cranial work, I used to be a trainer, and my goal was to help horses emotionally feel better about what was being presented and to bring clarity to their humans to understand how to read them, how to help them feel better, and kind of like an emotional rehab type training. So I was known as the person who would like almost a last resort person, because other people, I wasn't discipline focused. I was just, all I cared about was that the horse felt good about what was being asked of them. And that, in a sense, was very healing for me as well. And it was almost like I was doing my own therapy with these horses. And that's how I got into the cranial work, because I had a whole lineup of horses that were just a mess. And I started learning it and seeing how much it helped. But addressing it mostly addresses, it's like diving straight into the nervous system, because so many of them live in a heightened state, even when they're relaxed. And you look at their posture, you can see that they're in a heightened state, even though their sympathetic is stuck in an overdrive just by their stance, when their posture, how they move, how their footfall lands on the ground, how their eyeballs look around in their head when they look at things. And so the biodynamic work that I do, it kind of addresses them, instead of from a training perspective, it's more of our nervous systems talking to each other, saying, hey, can you find this more regulated space? Can your baseline come back to a softened place where it can function better? And the end result is similar. It's just addressing it from a different place now than what I used to.
Carla, how do you work with the writer? Because I think you offer something similar to what Nishan is talking about, but we're all pointing in the same direction, but from different places. So please.
I, I always call dressage yoga for horses. And most of my clients they probably don't even know that they are doing dressage, because oftentimes they ride in Western saddles, etc., and they don't even think they are doing dressage, but I teach them their leg yield or their shoulder in or something like that, right? So, and then I call it just yoga for horses, right? And so I totally agree with like making them feel better, making them feel stronger, etc. But then the rider has to know how to ask for all these things. Right, it's nice if you can teach the horse to do also all kinds of movements, even simple movements or the more advanced movements. But then the rider must make sure that she's not in the horse's way, and then feeling that in your body and understanding your body and understanding how you can use your body in a subtle way so that you're not blocking the horse's movement again and creating problems for the horse because they cannot move with you in these nice movements that would be good for the horse. I think that's really an important piece, that we get the rider in balance as well. And then it's not just the physical side, right? It's really the mental side, the emotional side of the rider as well, because then the rider has to overcome frustration and fear and all of that and stay focused and really be ready to feel what's happening underneath them. So it's a whole journey for the rider as well.
So how did you find yourself in that journey? Because that's different for all of us too, right? I mean, mine started when I was 3 years old, but can you talk, whatever you're happy to share, about what sensitized you to that on your own journey?
I really grew up in the German system, right? Which we're talking like 50 years ago when I started riding, and that it was a really strict system for everybody. The riders were yelled at, the horses had side reins on them and tight nosebands and all of that. And I've never really been happy with any of that, right? I loved horses too much and that was my only option to ride. But when I was like 14, 15, I even felt I don't even want to ride like that any longer. And I groomed some ponies of neighbors for 2 years, just went and groomed them to hang out with them and did not ride because I didn't want to ride that way, right? And it would hurt me because I really loved riding, but I really didn't want to do it any longer. So I was always looking for something different. And then I came across a person in Germany who revolutionized the German system at the time. And at her place, she had a barn, an equestrian center, and she invited people over like Linda Tellington-Jones and Western trainers. And she helped importing the first Icelandic horses to Germany when the vets thought that gaited horses are lame because they had never seen gaited horses before. And so she revolutionized the world, the world there. And I had the chance to do a 2-year full-time training at that place. And what was funny at that time was that those people in this alternative part of this work, they said, why are you writing this dressage stuff? And why are you interested in shows and jumping and eventing, right? Well, why are you even interested in this? And then the other people from the conventional side, they said, what are you doing with that alternative stuff? So, I felt I was kind of in between two worlds in a way. And that's kind of kind of a definition of my life, that I've always been a bit between two worlds. But then it came together more and more. And now I just find people that want that, right? That want both, that are still ambitious enough that they want to actually do something with themselves and with their horses. Doesn't have to be like, winning any shows, but just improving. People who want to improve. And then they don't really care how, It's like, is it for a show or is it for just a harmonious trail ride? It doesn't really matter, but they want to work on themselves.
Nice.
That's the question that popped in my head, is what do people think they're improving? That's something I'm asked all the time, is like, why do people find you? Why do people come to you? What are they looking for? And to me, that question too is like, how do we turn this? How do we, I don't know, not turn it, but continue to offer all the knowledge and the experience we have in, and expand the conversation in the horse world, right? So that it's not about so goal oriented necessarily, that I want to be a this, I want to win the ribbons or whatever. How, and again, there may not be an answer to this. This might be what we're creating right now, but how do we continue to offer an expanded conversation that isn't polarized for alternative and conventional, and just continues to be an invitation to awareness and partnership, what partnership is, because we all have our sense of what partnership feels like, right? You guys.
And I really resonate with I don't remember who said it, but I've always been the last resort person. You know, it's they'll finally like, you know, I guess I'll try letting you work with this horse, because it's either that or I'm going to put it down. You know, I mean, it's either that or, because I've been through 4 or 5 different trainers, and 4 or 5 different, you know, things to try. And so, you know, what the heck, I'll give you a try too. You know, that out there kind of thinking, that's how it's always been before. And so, you know, it is changing finally, I think, in that I was saying, you know, are the questions changing finally? And that possibly people will start to investigate those questions first, rather than as a last resort. Because I've never even called myself a horse trainer, but I'm the last resort. Like, you know, please will you work with this horse, because, you know, you're my last resort. This horse is going to be put down if you say, you know, it's impossible. And that's usually what they've been told by multiple other trainers, is this horse, there's something, you know, totally mentally wrong with it, or it can't be fixed. So it's just interesting. I'm hoping that that's where it's evolved now, that it's starting to be a more common and first asked question, rather than a last resort.
I think that a big thing for me is that there are a lot more weird people than people were comfortable with. And I think that now that there are, you know, I know that I'm a very strange bird. Like I totally accept that about myself. But I also, that also is where my power in being a human being in the world lay. Like, in really being able to feel with riders where there is trauma in their body, in my body, and helping them move that, and seeing how horses change, and being able to sometimes take the lock space in my body that a horse may have and move it around, and it being open, and in being able to hear them in the ways that I'm able to hear them. And people are like, you know, like I've been able to do that too, but I've been taught how not to trust that. And I think that the more people just show up as they are, and really not being afraid with how, you know, because the further you go, the deeper it gets, you know, and then you realize that it's really nowhere at all. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that the further people just learn that, one, it's okay to feel, and two, how they're feeling is okay, then 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 there's that art of self-trust, and then the intuition is awakened, and people start to follow it, you know. And I also think, like, for professionals, well, for me, it's really important to know that I'm not for everybody. You know, like, it's really important for me to let people know that, like, I understand that I'm weird and you're probably gonna experience some things that are pretty fucking strange, but we're working towards an answer. And and as long as the horse gets better and everybody gets better as a result, then we found truth.
So here's a question that really comes up for me from that, is that I've struggled with for myself. And so I'd love to hear all of your feedback of how do you deal with not feeling like you're betraying the horse if you say, let me help you, and then it becomes a time constraint with the person where they're like, okay, now you've got this horse where he's willing to participate. So great, I'm going, let me go back to what I was doing before. Let me go back to my other trainer, or let me, just continue what I was doing, because that's always felt to me like a horrible betrayal to the horse,
Sure.
and I don't really know how to deal with that. And so that's a question that I would love to get some feedback on from other professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, and it's. I think there is many aspects to this. I mean, one is just being really confident in your program and describing what it is that you do,
Yeah.
so you don't necessarily get that in, because I do think it's, I've done the same thing. And I got more and more particular about who I brought in training, and I'd interview them and I'd ask them a million questions, and still they'd take it home, slap that double back on, and then, oh, the tongue is sticking out. It's never done that before. I'm like, yeah, because now he knows a better way. Like, I can do fourth level in the halter, and then you went and anyway. So, I am happy to work with people, but I don't take the ones on. So part of it is going to be, as much as your heart aches for the horse and you want to help them, is it fair to open up that horse's heart and then
Right.
have it go back? So I think I want to kind of connect with something that was being talked about before, but I think it connects, is a lot of times if the groups of people like us, the conversation ends up being about, like, we're alternative and other people think this other way. And it always makes me a little uncomfortable. And, people are like, how do you convince other people? And I just gave that up a long time ago. I was like, I don't think I'm weird. Not as weird. I mean, I'm weird, but so is everybody. Like, everybody's weird.
Yeah.
Everybody's weird. And why are we setting ourselves up of like, ooh, this is some weird alternative way? No, this is like, we're all doing horsemanship. And I think we risk alienating people when we kind of start saying, other people do it this other wrong way, because we don't know who we're talking to. What I heard a lecture the other day, I'm like, what do you mean everyone? I don't do that. Don't lump me in there. So, but I think in just embracing that and just owning what we do and shining it really bright, and saying, this is what I do. Here's what I do. Here's the effect I have. Here's how I help people. And whatever other people are doing, that's fine. If it happens to be in the magazines or not, or like, who cares? I think there's lots of people like us that have the same intentions, or heart-centered, and come
Right.
and want to do that. And I think let's just focus on that. And I think the more we do that, Terry, it's like the more confident we're going to be having going, I don't do that. I'm not going to fix your horse in 3 weeks. I'm not going to fix it so you can go back and do that. Here's what I do. And then
Right.
maybe then we can attract the people who are like, yeah, take as much time as you want. And how do I learn how to do that? And then the people who have horses that are troubled and they realize, I don't want to do it that other way. Terry, I want to really know what you're doing. Then you'll have the person and the horse and now you can really have an effect. And like, let's focus on those, not the ones who are going, I'm going to put it down, you know, will you give it a try? And that pulls at our heartstrings.
That,
You
yeah,
know, but are
that
we,
really resonates in
yeah,
the,
but
it
can we
feels
help? And
really
it's
true.
hard, because then it
Yeah.
means maybe you'll turn away a horse, or maybe you'll start like me. I have a horse now because it was going to be turned down. I'm like, all right, I'll take it. You know, but
I guess it's that recognition again of there it is again, you know, of as soon as you get in your head as far as worrying about outcomes or worrying about control or whatever, you're out of your heart. Simple as
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
I used to deal with that a lot. When I was training, was how much do I open up this relationship? So I would not take in a horse unless the owner, well, you know, after a while you kind of get a feel of who was going to go there with you, who's going to go down that road, and who just wants a quick fix so they can get their agenda done. So I wouldn't take a horse unless the owner was going to be there with me. They didn't have to be there every single day because I know they had stuff to do, but I really wanted them to do as much of the work as possible. So a lot of my work ended up being working through the people, helping them see, helping them understand that they're not even present to see the horse, and trying to set things up to where they could come to that conclusion on their own. And then they can start to see where their horse is at and start to read them better. And, you know, some people would be like, I just want to go on a trail ride. Can't I just go out on the trail? Well, you can't steer, you can't stop.
Yeah, go ahead.
You lose your keys every 5 seconds. You know, all these things need to be addressed. And it's hard because I saw horses get opened up and then just get shut back down, and it's heartbreaking.
Mhm.
But I would try to incorporate the person as much as possible so they could start to see as well.
Yeah.
You know, people really need to understand that it's about them more than about the horses. And the horses are really strong motivators for change too. If people really love their horses, then they are ready to work on themselves as well to be better people for their horses. It's maybe the strongest motivator for self-development out there, right? And we really love the horses and want to do something for them. And then work on ourselves. And I mean, I find myself lucky that I am actually starting with the person, because I've trained horses too, but it was always the people came to me because they were ready to change and take things in. So it was not, I did not really have the quick fix cases at all, because people knew when they came that they had to work on themselves. That was the first step to take always. So in a way, I'm in an easier position, right? Because when they come to me, they know it's about the person first. So that sets them up right from the start.
That's exactly why my work went the direction that it has, is because I just kept asking from a bigger and bigger place, how do I actually help? And what it everything just distilled, you know, being fired for being kind, being fired for having no problems, you know, it just was very confusing. And the more I connected with the horses, the more they kept pointing me back at the people. And really, how my question became, what does it take to help people hear the horses and really receive all of this love and all of these gifts that the horses want to give? And it always came back to helping people reconnect with their own heart so that they can feel that part of themselves that is brave enough to let things change, that's brave enough to let things be soft, that's brave enough to receive the horse trying, even if it doesn't match anything on a list of pre-approved outcomes, right? And how do you help people connect with that part of themselves? Because once they feel that, the horses are going to go, oh, there you are, and start feeding that softness part, and then they're open to, you know, guidance for how to continue in that space, how to move together in that quietness and that softness and that mutual giving and receiving. That's the magic, you know, when we feel those points of magic. It's that's entirely why my work has gone the direction that it has, is to help the people be available. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I think it's like the relationship part, right? Is I think to kind of help ask people like what their view of them with their horse is. I mean, if they're coming from a, you know, my horse must obey me, it's a control drama, then probably they're not going to see it as things other than I need it fixed, you know. But I think to explain, like I see it as a relationship, right? And it's really a relationship between the person and the horse. And the same way in a herd, it's not a hierarchy, it's like this bilateral relationship thing. And so, you know, in a relationship, you don't send your partner off for, you know, husband training and then expect it to come back, here, go with this other woman for a while and get some husband training and then come back. Like it doesn't matter if he's good with her. Like we gotta do this together. And so I think, you know, yes, there's times when you go off and get counseling, but it's gotta be all for coming together. So I think that's where, like, you know, Terry and Shay is like, we can work with the horse and help bring some understanding and some abilities, and but we also need to bring the rider in. And I think that's the piece that, you know, is the person in it for the relationship with their horse. That's what makes me go, oh, okay, this is fun. So when when things aren't getting along, I say, well, do you have goals? And clearly this horse is not going to meet your goals. So do you need a different horse? That's okay. You know, or are you in it for the horse and you don't care what you end up doing as long as you get together with the horse? And then I'm like, okay, if they say that one, then I'm like, well, you're for me. Right? Because the worst thing is to know something's not working. It's not going to work ever because the goals and the abilities are never going to match. And it's fine to let that horse go to somebody else who can feel like that horse is their best horse that they ever met in the world. And you get a horse that has similar, you know, abilities and to match your goals. But I think that's where the relationship part comes in to the training model. But we need to kind of suss that out, because if they don't see it as relationship.
Well, and that to me speaks to how humanity might have an opportunity to have a different understanding of what relationship is, because I think so many humans are brought up in a culture where relationship means you give me what I want when I want it.
Right.
And if I'm happy enough, I'll give back to you, which is all transactional, you know, and horses are not transactional. They're all qualitative. But go ahead, Nishan.
I think the important thing for me too is understanding that, and I think that this is where a lot of my challenge lay, is that once the horse's problem gets better and we're out of rehab and we're back into training, then it's where I've learned to say, like, this is as far as I can bring you. I've done my part, right? Like, and 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 I think that kind of like a rule of thumb for me is like, I don't say no to any horse, but I do say no to people. You know, I mean, and that's a really, really important thing. And so, I mean, and so like, and so it's kind of grown to where as a helper of horses and people, I have to say, like, what about this work also nourishes my heart? Because if I have this ability to help them and I'm just being depleted, then I'm no help. And so, like, a lot of my work is I do have a small bunch of writing students. A lot of it is rehab work. And then I have my own separate dressage practice just for myself, with me and my horses that nobody else is allowed in on. And so that's why, like, in showing a lot of my work, I rarely show any of my personal horses, because like that's for me. And there we can explore the upper level work, and we can explore the high school work. And I'm growing in a way that continues to help me understand what a healthy body should feel like, and like where it's not happening in this broken horse that has showed up at my door. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's really important, I have found, in just not giving all of yourself away to everyone in each situation, keeping part of the work for you.
I love that conversation. That could launch me in a whole other direction, and because it makes me want to ask the question, when I'm teaching, what am I giving?
Hmm.
What am I giving? What does it mean to be giving of myself? In this, for some people, might go into the realm of and the idea of boundaries. And do we set boundaries? And is there another way that isn't about putting up a barrier and maintaining it? And it's a very fluid conversation. That's one of my favorites, and beyond the scope of today's, because we've just
Time.
got about
Yeah.
10 minutes left together today. But that's a potent conversation to have. And it does begin with self-knowledge, being aware of what's working for me, especially in the position of a teacher or a guide or a trainer for horses or people. I think regardless of the situation, regardless of whether a person would call themselves conventional or not, or put themselves in a camp or not, anybody sharing their wisdom is leading by example, because people are looking for, how do you do it? How can we do it? How could it be done? And this, to me, is the foundation of why self-awareness and self-knowledge is the greatest gift that we can give one another, whether we do a dressage thing or a Western thing or pony rides. How you show up speaks volumes. It's the greatest communication. And honestly, that's what I think horses lead us toward as humans when we pay attention. It's the beautiful foundation of relationship is, who am I when I show up, and how much of my true self can I offer? And am I brave enough to see myself in the situation? And I think horses are just such a brilliant space to play and explore that.
I think that's my personal definition for myself of boundaries, is not where am I putting walls to keep things out or to protect myself. It's more of a boundary for me is clarity on what I'm willing to say yes to. I mean, what I'm welcoming to give. That's a boundary to me. So boundaries just mean clarity for myself of what I am giving.
But if boundary means clarity, why do we, sorry, and this is where my head goes.
Let's go.
Why do we have two different words?
No.
If boundary means clarity, why can we simply just say, here's my clarity, right? And it takes courage to, like Nishan was talking about, and Karen, like we're all doing, to step beyond a conventional definition, right? Because I love what you're saying, Terry. That, to me, that's what it is. If I have,
and that's
clarity,
because that's a question that comes up a lot, right? Is what are boundaries? To me, it's clarity.
And I think that,
take away the word boundary.
yeah, I think in there we go back to what the heart for me of this whole conversation is: what language feels safe? What language feels safe? Because words are magic and sentences are spells. Like what language feels safe for me to use in this space? Because like that's how we're giving ourselves to the people who are in our space, we're you know, that's the surest expression of our heart that can translate how we're feeling about this moment in this very moment. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, for me, it's like, what language do I feel I can't use in this space? And that lets me know where I feel comfortable intuitively what this person means to my heart. Is this going to work out? Right? Relationships also mean growth and change. Like, are they willing, are they, as we move forward, are they growing in a way that I can continue to grow with them in? You know, I mean, and all of it is love. And sometimes love means moving away. You know, it's all love.
It's all love. And I love the journey, perhaps, is finding my own relationship to love, you know, and it's a unique dance for each of us. I know that's a conversation I show up for every time. We've got just about 5 minutes left, and I just want to honor all of your time. So in closing, does anyone want to share anything in closing? Any reflections? I know we're just kind of making this up as we go. I just want to honor each of your time, but and huge gratitude. Thank you all for showing up and sharing so openly. I hope we can just keep creating spaces for this to happen more and more, because you're all priceless, absolutely priceless.
I love the meanderingness of this conversation, because we just sort of started talking and followed threads, and who knows what we ended up talking about. I love that it didn't I love that it didn't need to reach any bullet points.
Yeah.
We didn't have to meet any promises. Our promises were going to show up, and we're just going to be here, and we're going to listen and share. And I think that's really refreshing and cool, because yeah, I love this conversation. So thank you all. This was super fun.
It felt very much like friendship, right? Like, I think that that's the feeling in my heart right now. Like, I could see all of us at dinner over a nice meal having this same conversation. There's no place to go, there's no place to be. Everybody's okay, you know? And I think that, like, for me, that's my work. Like, it's all okay. It's all okay. And thank you all for also changing the time for me.
This worked out perfect.
I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's cold. It's cold in Colorado. Here, it's 70 degrees where I am, and I'm going to the beach later today.
Yeah, it's 35 right now. So thank you.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I always feel so nourished when I come out of these conversations with you guys, you girls. It just feels so good. It feels so fulfilling and complete. Thank you.